They say love is the safest feeling in the world. But to the avoidant, love can feel like a trap, a tightening rope around their chest. Not because they don't care, but because your care feels like pressure, a pressure they don't know how to hold. The strange weight of affection. Love feels light to most people. A hug feels like comfort. A text feels like reassurance. A hand on the shoulder feels like safety. But to the avoidant, love is rarely light. It is rarely simple. It rarely lands the way you intend. Because for them, even the gentlest acts of affection carry an invisible weight. When you hug them, you feel warmth. They feel pressure. The pressure to stay. The pressure to return what you're giving. The pressure to not let you down. A hug isn't just a hug. It becomes a message. A message that says, "Don't leave me. Don't hurt me. Don't change your mind." And though you may never have spoken those words, their body translates touch into responsibility. When you text, you are simply reaching out, checking in, saying, "I'm thinking of you." But for the avoidant, that notification lights up like a signal. It says, "Now it's on you. Reply. Match the effort. Show up in the same way." And the weight begins to grow. They do not always feel free to receive love as it is, because love, to them, isn't neutral. It is charged. It carries unspoken contracts. And this comes from history, from childhood moments where love was always conditional, where affection was tied to behavior, where attention was tied to performance. They learned, if I accept love, I owe something back. So when you give them care, they don't feel the gift. They feel the debt. And debts are heavy. Imagine you pour your heart out to them. You tell them how much they mean to you. You confess how deeply you care. To you, this is intimacy. To you, this is connection. But to them, those words echo inside like chains. They don't only hear, "I care for you." They hear, "Now you must meet me here. Now you must feel the same. Now you must be ready to match this love." And even if you never ask for anything, their nervous system fills in the blanks. It assumes demand. It assumes expectation. Because love has never been safe ground for them. It has always been quicksand. It has always been something that pulls them down, not something that holds them up. This is why they pull back, often in the very moments you come closer. Not because they don't want you, not because your love is unwanted, but because your love feels like weight. And the more you give, the heavier it feels. It is one of the cruelest paradoxes of intimacy with an avoidant. They long for closeness. They dream of being chosen. They imagine a love where they are safe, seen, and wanted. But when that love arrives, their body goes into alarm. It misinterprets your affection as control, as demand, as pressure, and the cycle begins. You might notice it in their silence. When you open up, they close down. When you lean in, they lean away. When you are most vulnerable, they seem most distant. It looks like rejection. It feels like rejection. But in truth, it is fear. Fear of being swallowed. Fear of being trapped. Fear of losing themselves in your love. Because for the avoidant, to accept love fully is to risk disappearing. And they will do anything to protect their sense of self, even if that means rejecting the very closeness they crave. This is why affection feels different to them. Because affection is not neutral. It is not simply kindness. It is not simply warmth. Affection carries a shadow of history, a shadow of memory, a shadow of all the times love was tangled with pain, or absence, or unmet needs. So when you hold their hand, you are not only holding it in this moment, you are holding the echoes of every moment. They reached out and were let down. When you look into their eyes, you are not only gazing at them now, you are also stirring the memory of every gaze. that looked past them or demanded something from them. They were too small to give. When you love them, you touch every wound that has ever taught them love is unsafe. And their nervous system reacts, not to you, but to the ghosts inside. This is why they struggle to rest in love. They do not know how to let affection land without turning it into a burden, without translating it into demand, without bracing for what might follow. To you, love is freedom. To them, love is responsibility. To you, love is security. To them, love is risk. To you, love is the beginning of closeness. To them, love is the beginning of pressure. This is the strange weight of affection, and unless you understand it, their reactions will look cold. Their distance will feel cruel. Their silence will feel like rejection. But what you are really witnessing is the only way they know how to survive love. By stepping back, by lessening the weight, by protecting themselves from being crushed by the very thing they desire. And here lies the heartbreaking truth. They are not rejecting you. They are rejecting the weight they feel. They are rejecting the pressure they imagine. They are rejecting the history they carry. You may see them stiffen under your touch. You may notice them pause before responding to your care. You may feel them pull away after you've given them your most tender words. And it will hurt. It will feel personal. It will cut deep. But in reality, this is not about your love being wrong. It is about their nervous system not knowing how to hold it, not knowing how to believe that affection can be safe, can be soft, can be given freely, without demand. This is why the avoidant is so complex. They don't just fear intimacy. They fear the invisible contracts that intimacy seems to carry. They fear that by letting you in, they will lose themselves. They fear that by receiving love, they will be bound to give back in ways they cannot sustain. They fear that affection is not a gift, but a weight they don't know how to carry. And so they step back, not to punish you, not to hurt you, but to breathe, to feel free again, to remind themselves that they are still whole, still separate, still safe. This is the avoidance paradox. They want love more than anything, and yet, when it arrives, they cannot hold it, because love, to them, is not light. It is heavy. It presses down. It suffocates. And so they protect themselves, the only way they know how, by creating space, by retreating, by stepping back from the weight of affection. This is the strange weight of love in the avoidance world. And once you understand it, their distance makes more sense, not as rejection, but as survival, the quiet panic of closeness. To most people, closeness is calming. It softens the heart. It slows the mind. It feels like a homecoming. But for the avoidant, closeness does not calm. Closeness alarms. The closer you get, the louder their nervous system screams. Not with words, not with visible panic, but with a quiet, internal storm. You might not see it, because on the outside, they look composed, cool, even distant. But inside, it is chaos, a war between wanting and fearing, between craving and fleeing. When you lean in, their body braces. When you share your heart, their chest tightens. When you offer vulnerability, their mind whispers one word: run. And yet, they don't want to run. They want to stay. They want to be the one you trust. They want to know the comfort of being known. But closeness, for them, isn't neutral. It is loaded. It carries danger. It carries risk. Because when they were small, closeness was never safe. Maybe they grew up in a home where warmth arrived in bursts, but disappeared just as quickly. Maybe love was unpredictable. Maybe affection was conditional. One moment, they were held. The next, they were ignored. One moment, they were praised. The next, they were criticized. One moment, they were safe. The next, they were left alone. So their nervous system learned. Closeness is a setup. Closeness doesn't last. Closeness comes with strings. Better to rely on yourself. Better to stay guarded. Better to never lean too much on another. This was not a choice. This was survival. And survival rewires the body. It teaches the nervous system to see closeness as danger, to see vulnerability as risk, to see love as a slippery rope that can burn the hands if held too tightly. So when you come closer, you are not just entering this moment with them. You are entering a room full of ghosts. Ghosts of every time closeness turned into pain. Ghosts of every time trust turned into disappointment. Ghosts of every time hope collapsed into hurt. And their body remembers, even when their mind says, "This is safe. This person is kind. This moment is good." Their body whispers, "Be careful. Don't lean too much. Don't let them all the way in." This is the quiet panic of closeness. It is not the panic you can see. It is not the panic that shouts. It is not the panic that breaks down in tears. It is a hidden panic, a panic of micro movements, of small silences, of little retreats, the delayed text, the sudden distraction, the need for space, the change of subject. When the conversation gets too deep, to you, it looks confusing. It feels like mixed signals. It makes you wonder, do they care at all? But inside them, it is a battle you cannot see, a battle between the part of them that longs to stay close and the part of them that fears they'll lose themselves if they do. This is why they sometimes feel so far away. Just when things are going well, you laugh together. You share a night of deep connection. You feel closer than ever. And then suddenly, they grow quiet. They retreat. They act as though nothing happened. It isn't that the closeness meant nothing. It's that the closeness meant too much. It stirred up the panic. It pressed on the nerves that have always equated intimacy with eventual pain. So they shut down, not because the night was empty, but because the night was full, too full, so full it overwhelmed their system. Think of it like this. When you pour water into a cup, the cup holds it. But if you keep pouring, the cup overflows. For the avoidant, closeness fills their nervous system like water. And while they can hold some, while they do want some, it doesn't take much before it spills over. And when it spills over, they don't know how to say, "This is too much for me." They don't know how to ask, "Can we slow down?" So they create distance instead. Distance is their way of regulating. Distance is their way of surviving the overflow. And this is where the heartbreak often happens. Because you take the distance personally. You assume it means they don't value what you shared. You assume it means the bond wasn't real. You assume it means they never cared. But in truth, it means the opposite. It means they cared enough to feel overwhelmed. It means the closeness touched something raw. It means the moment mattered so much that it shook their nervous system awake. The panic isn't proof of rejection. It is proof of impact. Still, this does not make it easier for you, because their panic feels like punishment. It feels like abandonment. It feels like being shut out from a room you just began to enter. And unless you understand what's happening, you will start to question yourself. You will start to wonder if you're asking for too much, if you're too needy, if you're the problem. But you are not the problem. You are simply standing close to someone who learned long ago that closeness is unsafe, and their nervous system, though outdated, still lives in that past. This is why their panic is quiet, because they don't want to lose you. They don't want to push you away completely. They don't want to reveal just how loud the alarms are inside. So they retreat in small ways, ways that protect them, without fully severing the bond. They'll answer later. They'll say they're busy. They'll tell you they just need some space. On the surface, these look like simple actions, but beneath them is a storm you cannot see. A storm of longing and fear. A storm of wanting to stay and needing to run. A storm that makes closeness the very thing they crave and the very thing they fear. This is the quiet panic of closeness. It is not about you. It is not about your worth. It is not about whether they care. It is about their history. It is about their nervous system. It is about the way their body has learned to survive love by retreating from it, and until they feel safe enough to rewrite that script. Closeness will always stir the storm. Closeness will always carry panic. Closeness will always be both the medicine and the trigger. So if you have ever felt confused by the way they pull back just when you draw near, remember this: you are not being rejected. You are standing too close to a fire they don't know how to warm themselves by, a fire that has burned them before, a fire that both attracts and frightens them. And though they long to stay, their body tells them to survive, step back. This is the paradox of the avoidant. Their heart leans in, their body leans out, their longing whispers yes, their fear shouts no, and they live caught between those two voices. Why distance feels like safety to you? Distance feels like rejection, like absence, like a slow pulling away. But to the avoidant, distance feels like air, like breathing, like relief. Distance is not about not caring. Distance is about surviving. From the outside, it can look cold, cruel, even selfish, because when you lean in with love and they lean out with space, it hurts. It confuses. It makes you wonder if you are loving the wrong person. But what you don't see is this: for the avoidant, distance is regulation. It is the way they soothe themselves when closeness feels overwhelming. It is not the absence of love. It is the presence of fear. Think of it like a fire alarm. The fire alarm doesn't know if the smoke is from a candle or a burning house. It just reacts. It just rings. The avoidance body works the same way. Closeness sets off the alarm. Whether the closeness is safe or not, their body cannot tell. It only knows what it once learned. Too close equals too risky. So the alarm rings, and the avoidant steps back. This stepping back looks different for each one. Some disappear into work. They bury themselves in tasks, in achievements, in goals. Some disappear into distractions, scrolling, gaming, anything that creates noise, to drown out the quiet pull of intimacy. Some disappear into silence. They text less. They call less. They answer with fewer words. And some disappear into walls. Walls of sarcasm, walls of humor, walls of deflection that keep the conversation light, but never deep. Different methods, same function, distance. And this distance feels safe to them because closeness has always felt unpredictable. When they were young, the ones they leaned on were the same ones who let them fall. The ones they depended on were the same ones who turned away. The ones they wanted love from were the same ones who couldn't give it consistently. So their body made a bargain, a survival pact. Don't lean too close. Don't depend too much. Don't open too wide. If you do, you will only be hurt. This pact runs deep. It lives under their skin. It shapes their reflexes. It colors their choices. It makes distance feel like control, like safety, like the one place they can breathe, without fear of suffocating. And so when you see them pull away, you are not watching indifference. You are watching self-protection. You are watching the nervous system wrap itself in armor. You are watching an old script play itself again and again. A script that says, love them, but not too much. Stay close, but not too close. Care, but keep an exit. The irony is this: Distance is the very thing that keeps them from receiving the love they secretly long for. Because while they protect themselves from pain, they also protect themselves from intimacy. While they avoid the risk of loss, they also avoid the joy of closeness. While they shield themselves from hurt, they also shield themselves from healing. And so their safety comes at a cost. The cost of connection, the cost of depth, the cost of being truly known. To you, this feels like a wall, like they are choosing space over you, like they are saying, "You don't matter." But to them, distance is not about you. It is about survival. It is about calming the alarms inside. It is about finding balance. When closeness tips them over, they may not even realize why they are doing it. It is so automatic, so unconscious, so deeply woven into who they became. Picture a child who wanted to cry, but learned not to, because every time they cried, the comfort never came, or it came too late, or it came with judgment. That child grew up, learning that emotions are dangerous, that needs are unsafe, that closeness is unreliable. So now, as an adult, when you move close, they step back, not because they don't want you, but because the child in them still remembers the ache of wanting comfort that never arrived. And their body says, "Don't risk it again. It's safer to need less." This is why they can feel so steady when they are alone, so composed, so self-contained. But the moment intimacy enters, the alarms begin. The ground feels shaky. The old fears awaken. So they step into distance. The way some people step into water. It suits them. It resets them. It helps them feel like they are in control again. But here is the cruel twist. While distance feels like safety to them, it feels like abandonment to you. Their safety becomes your insecurity. Their calm becomes your ache. Their reset becomes your wound. And this is the cycle. The push and pull. The hot and cold. The rhythm of avoidant love. You move closer. They feel smothered. They move away. You feel rejected. You chase harder. They retreat further. And round it goes. What most don't realize is this. The avoidant isn't running from you. They are running from the feeling of losing themselves, from the terror of depending too much, from the risk of repeating a childhood pain they swore they'd never feel again. And in that running, they lose something anyway. They lose the closeness they quietly want. They lose the bond that could heal. They lose the chance to discover that love can, in fact, be safe. So if you've ever wondered why they seem calmer when apart than together, why they seem more open in solitude than intimacy, why they sometimes look like they love you most when they're furthest away, it's because distance, for them, isn't rejection. It's safety. It's breath. It's the one place their nervous system knows how to rest, even if it means resting alone. The longing they hide. On the surface, the avoidant looks like they don't need much. They look steady, independent, unbothered, like they can live without closeness, like love is optional, like they don't crave intimacy the way others do. But this is an illusion, a performance, a carefully constructed mask, because underneath the silence, beneath the independence, behind the walls, there is a longing, a deep, secret ache, a yearning for love that they rarely allow themselves to admit. This is the paradox of the avoidant. They long for the very thing they are terrified of. They want closeness. They fear closeness. They want intimacy. They fear intimacy. They want to be seen. They fear being seen. It is a constant tug of war inside of them, a battle between desire and dread, between reaching and retreating, between the pull of love and the push of fear. This hidden longing shows itself in small, fleeting ways. When they look at you longer than usual, but glance away before you notice. when they text you at night, in the quiet hours, when their guard is tired, and their heart feels braver, when they bring you coffee, without calling it affection, when they ask about your day, but keep their voice casual, like it doesn't mean much. Little gestures, tiny cracks in the armor, moments when the longing slips through, but just as quickly, the fear returns. The walls go back up. The distance reappears. Because if they allow the longing to grow, they must face the risk of being disappointed, of being hurt, of needing you, and you not being there. And to the avoidant, this risk feels unbearable. So they bury the longing. They tuck it away. They train themselves not to need. And they convince themselves that they are fine without closeness, that independence is better, that solitude is strength. But no matter how deep they bury it, the longing remains. It lingers. It waits. It haunts. Because the human heart was not built to live without connection, even theirs. You may have seen it, the way they sometimes soften when they think you're not watching, the way their eyes hold something tender before they look away, the way their words almost stumble into vulnerability before they catch themselves and change the subject. These are the signs, the quiet confessions, the moments when the longing they hide almost reaches the surface. But why do they hide it? Because for the avoidant, longing feels dangerous. To long is to need. To need is to risk. To risk is to lose. And so they silence the longing. They teach themselves not to hope too much, not to want too deeply, not to trust too easily. This silence is their shield, but it is also their prison. Because here is the truth. The avoidant does not escape longing. They only suppress it. And suppressed longing does not disappear. It leaks. It spills. It comes out sideways. Sometimes as jealousy. Sometimes as frustration. Sometimes as a quiet melancholy they can't explain. And sometimes it comes out as obsession, watching from a distance, thinking about you more than they admit, holding on in silence, even while acting detached. This is why so many people describe the avoidant as both distant and attached, because they are. They may step back physically, but emotionally, they can't let go. They hold you in their mind. They replay memories. They notice your absence more than they ever confess. It is the hidden longing at work, the ache that refuses to be silenced. The tragedy is this: their longing could bring them closer to love, but their fear keeps them apart. So they live in the in-between, wanting but not reaching, needing but not asking, loving but not showing. It is a half-love, a shadow of intimacy, a closeness they imagine, but rarely allow themselves to fully experience. And yet, if you've ever felt like you were special to them, without clear proof, if you've ever sensed care in their silence, if you've ever seen the contradiction between their distance and their eyes, you were not imagining it. That was the longing they hide, the love they cannot kill, the tenderness that survives beneath all the defenses, because no matter how well they act, like they don't need anyone, the truth is, they do, and you may never hear them say it. You may never see them show it fully, but you can feel it in the pauses, in the glances, in the way they stay, even while keeping space. That is the paradox of the avoidant heart, distant on the outside, longing on the inside, always both. When silence speaks louder than love, the avoidant will never be the one who shouts their feelings from the rooftops. They won't write long confessions. They won't flood you with constant words. They won't make their emotions loud, obvious, or easy to read, because for them, love lives in silence, in the spaces between what is said, in the things left unspoken. But here's the paradox: that silence, the very thing that protects them, The very thing they believe hides their longing often ends up revealing them more than words ever could. Think about it. The way their absence hurts more than any fight. The way their retreat says more than an entire speech. The way you can feel their care, not through declarations, but through the small things they thought went unnoticed. Their silence is not empty. It is charged, heavy, full of meaning. For the avoidant, silence is both armor and confession. It hides the vulnerability they are terrified to show, but it also exposes it. Because silence carries weight, it carries longing, it carries the truth they can't find the courage to say out loud. This is why you feel torn around them, confused, drawn in, and pushed away at the same time. Because their silence doesn't match their heart, their distance doesn't match their longing, and you are left trying to read between the lines, to decode what they cannot bring themselves to say. But here is what most people never realize. Their silence is not rejection. It is protection, not indifference, but defense. Not a lack of love, but a lack of safety. When they disappear, it is not always because they don't care. Sometimes, it's because they care too much and don't know what to do with it. When they don't reply, it is not always because you don't matter. Sometimes, it's because you matter so much that replying feels terrifying. When they act like they don't need you, it is not because they truly don't. It is because needing feels like weakness, and weakness feels unsafe. So they retreat into silence, into the only space where they feel like they still have control. But ironically, that silence becomes the loudest message of all. You can hear it if you listen closely. The love they don't admit, the ache they don't name, the longing they don't show. Their silence whispers it all. It whispers, "I feel more than I can say." It whispers, "I want you, but I'm afraid of needing you." It whispers, "I love, but love terrifies me." And maybe this is why silence from them hurts more than words ever could. Because deep down, you know their silence isn't empty. It's full of everything they cannot say, full of all the feelings they have spent their whole life suppressing, full of a love that is real, but buried. Here lies the tragedy and the beauty. The avoidant may never show love the way you expect. They may never give words the way you hope, but their silence, as frustrating as it feels, is also proof. Proof that you reached them, proof that you matter, proof that you touched a place inside them they swore would never be touched. Because silence is not nothing. Silence is not absence. Silence is not indifference. Silence, in their world, is the closest thing to a confession. And if you've ever felt their silence was heavy, if you've ever felt their absence carried meaning, if you've ever felt that they said more in silence than most people do in words, you were right. That was their love, in its quietest, rawest form. Now here is what most never see. When you stop chasing them, when you stop filling the silence, when you stop trying to pull the words out of them, something changes. Because the avoidant is used to their silence being filled. They are used to you carrying the weight of the connection. They are used to you making sense of the space. But when you don't, when you let the silence sit, when you let them feel it, they notice, they feel it, and suddenly their silence is no longer protection. It becomes a mirror showing them the cost of distance, a mirror showing them the ache of absence, a mirror showing them the truth, that they cannot hide their longing forever. This is often the moment that cracks their defenses, not because you forced them open, not because you begged for closeness, but because the silence they once controlled now controls them. They begin to hear it differently. They begin to feel the emptiness inside it. They begin to realize that silence doesn't protect them from love. It only keeps them lonely. And maybe, just maybe, this is how change begins. Not with words, not with arguments, not with pressure, but with silence, with the very thing they've always used to protect themselves, turned back into the thing that finally reveals what they cannot deny. Because love is patient. Love doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes love speaks through absence. Sometimes love speaks through stillness. Sometimes love speaks through the silence that refuses to let them go. And so, if you've ever felt like your silence spoke louder than your words, you were right. Because for the avoidant, silence is the language they understand, the one they cannot run from, the one that pierces their defenses, the one that reveals their truth. In the end, silence does what words could not. It cracks the armor. It stirs the longing. It confronts the fear. And for once, the avoidant has nowhere to hide. Not behind walls. Not behind independence. Not behind attachment. Because silence follows them everywhere. And in its weight, they finally feel the love they tried to escape. So remember this. When words fail, when distance grows, when the avoidant hides, your silence may become the loudest thing of all. Not as punishment, not as strategy, but as truth. A truth that says, I will not chase you, but I am here. A truth that says, I see you, even when you hide. A truth that says, love doesn't vanish, even in silence. And maybe one day, they will realize their silence was never strength. It was only fear, and it was love, quiet but unshakable, that pierced it all along.